Welcome to Build. I'm Laura Haywood. Just around the corner from our studio sits the Public Theater, one of the most important cultural institutions in New York City, with a mission of engaging audiences in the most important ideas and social issues of today. The new play Kings by Sarah Burgess, opening this month at the Public, is a comedic yet scathing look inside the world of Washington lobbyists and the representatives they're tasked to influence. Please join me in welcoming actresses Gillian Jacobs, Aya Cash, Eisa Davis, and director Thomas Kail. Congratulations to all of you on your brilliant performances and direction. I'd love to have you each take a turn telling us about your character and how she fits into the world of the play. Do you want to start?
That's me. I play Lauren, who is a lobbyist and a finance lobbyist. Very successful, very driven, and very much a believer in the system. So she fits into this world in that she very much is this world. And then, of course, an outsider candidate comes in and sort of shakes things up. You want to talk about that?
Okay, yeah. I guess I'm that outsider candidate. I play a congresswoman who just won a special election in Texas. And what she is doing is really trying to shake up the status quo in Washington and trying to remove the corruption that's there in terms of how campaign finance is handled and the fact that private donations and corporations really rule our democracy. So she's trying to make a change in that.
And I play Kate, who is a lobbyist in the healthcare world. And I am slightly less successful than Lauren, but still a believer in the system. And I unsuccessfully try to lobby our new congresswoman. And you watch our relationship develop as the play goes on.
It sounds like the description of every comedy I've ever seen. Just another insider Washington comedy.
Well, I mean, it strikes me as something I've never seen before. I mean, if you had told me there was going to be a comedy about, finance reform loopholes, I would be like, no.
Well, you have to meet Sarah Burgess, our incredible playwright,
who really amazing.
Decided that it was possible and then made it possible. So.
The amount of jargon in this play blows my mind, but there wasn't a single moment that I felt confused about what you guys are talking about. I think that is a testament to Sarah, but also to you, Tommy. Can you talk about directing difficult language, especially when it comes to very industry-specific jargon?
Well, I will say that difficult language is irrelevant when you have very talented cast members, and Zach Renier rounds out our cast. And I say this, it's very simple. My job is to get the right people on stage, and Sarah gave us the right words, and you really just have to trust in that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my job is just getting out of the way. I mean, once I was smart enough to hire these 4 people, then it's just trying not to screw it up. It actually makes it pretty simple for me.
What was it about each of these actresses that made you know that she was right for the part?
How much time do we have?
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it?
Did Aya give you these questions? Because it sounds kind of Aya-ish to me.
Say something nice.
Look, I mean, what I'm looking for, along with Sarah, is essential characteristics. Obviously, we needed powerful, intelligent, committed characters to be represented by actors who embody those same things. Mm-hmm. And I mean, come on, it wasn't that hard. I mean, like when people like this are in the world, or you meet them, or they interact with the language, and you see them do it, your job is just to be smart and trust your instincts. And so it was very apparent early on that that this was the group to tell the story. And so we've really trusted in that you have the right people saying the right things, and you go from there. But they're all fantastic, and I'd be a fool not to hire them. For every
really
show I ever did.
Aya is great because Gillian is great because, but you know.
But you know what?
But you can be
follow me online
if you want.
Hashtag Tommy Kail.
Just whisper it in my ear later.
Yes, we'll do that. That sounds better.
How much did you guys learn about actual finance reform and lobbying? And I mean, it certainly sounds like you know what you're talking about.
I've learned so much working on this play. One concept that really struck me is this idea of broadening a bill to death, which is this thing in DC where a representative can publicly say they support an idea, but privately assure the donors and super PACs and lobbyists that they will not vote for it because the bill is too narrow in its scope and they don't want to miss out on a chance to have more comprehensive legislation. And that has really made me rethink how, people speak publicly and what these interactions that are going on privately and why these things that there is a general consensus about don't pass in Congress. And I think it's a lot of these, relationships that are happening that you see in this play.
I think, something that really shocked me was the amount of time that Congress people have to spend on fundraising. And I actually saw just a little photo of a little list that's given out to Congress people, and it actually tells you how many hours a day you're supposed to spend on fundraising, and it's about like 5 or 6, and there's like an hour allowed for, it says like restoration. And literally, and then, you're supposed to, I don't know when you're supposed to go to the floor and have time to go to committee and really spend all of, that really deep research that you need to do, whether it's with your constituents or, with people who are experts in the field. But it's really shocking, and that's all happened, of course, since 2010 with Citizens United, that people have to spend all their time in office fundraising.
But they're not actually allowed to be in their own office while they're fundraising. They have to do it from their cars and stuff because of, again, like weird Washington loopholes. So it's so exhausting. And I was so glad to have an opportunity to be entertained while I learned about this stuff. And I think that that's, well, it reminds me of other work that you've done, Tommy, even at the Public, Hamilton, to get entertained while you're learning about the way that America works. And I think it's really fantastic.
There's something like in a positive spin that I feel like I've learned from this play, or something that I've connected to is the idea. I actually feel like lobbyists are the creatives of DC in many ways. Kate has a speech about, we're the ones doing the real work in Washington, processing raw data, and I think that's a really interesting. They are the creatives who are coming up with ideas of how to craft laws. Granted, they are often very biased for whoever they're lobbying for, but I connect to that idea in a way that I wasn't expecting to.
It struck me seeing all of the ego stroking that goes in between lobbyists and representatives that this is actually a world that's very much like Hollywood. And you guys all have extensive careers in the performing arts, and I'm wondering whether you drew from any experiences you've had in the world of Hollywood and movies and television.
A lifetime of sucking up for me, so I feel like...
I was going to say no one ever stroked my ego, so I have no idea what that's about.
No, you stroke other people.
Do I? I've never.
You got it. You stroke other people's egos, and then you get a career, apparently.
Well, this is apparently, I'm shocked that I have a career at all, and that Tommy, hired me, because apparently, like my character, Sydney, I don't do too much ego stroking. Yikes.
I remember when I first graduated from college, my agent told me that I was going to have to learn how to give good meeting, which I feel like is what our characters do. It's just like learning to read the room, like Zach's character says that her character is incapable of doing, of being who you need to be for each individual room. And I think that was a skill that my agent was like, you're going to have to learn as you go into all these meetings and you have generals, and sort of regardless of what the person is giving back, you have to behave as though they're being incredibly friendly and warm and welcoming. So it is a skill that you have to develop of, like, regardless of what's coming at you, you're just so happy to be there.
Yeah, I call it professional flirting.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting because now I feel like there's this interest in this tendency for people to try to embrace what's authentic. So the authentic self, which I think has shifted even since I started doing this. I feel like code switching is instinctively and inherently part of what we do. That's one of the reasons I like directing, is that I necessarily should have a different relationship with each of these three as I would with Zach, and yet we also need, as a collective, to be able to communicate in a single gesture. But this idea of going into a room, understanding what the room needs, is something that is. I think it's cultivated, and some people do inherently more efficiently than others. But now, what you really hear about is people that actually are who they are. I think there's currency in that, and not like in a entertainment currency way, but just because it's actually the thing that cuts through.
Sure.
Because then you're just exposing and expressing fundamentally who you are.
And that's what Sydney Millsap, this new congressman, does. Is she's so authentic, and that reads as integrity in a world where there is very little integrity. And it throws these lobbyists for a loop because they don't even know how to deal with somebody who's not motivated by power. And that's what makes her such an interesting character.
Yeah, and I think, something that we talked about in just in rehearsal and like the process of building this character is just, why does she have this level of nakedness and this level of boldness and this kind of integrity? And it really comes from the experience that she has as a war widow, and she's lost her husband in combat. And that kind of loss and that kind of grief just, gives her a kind of fearlessness.
Yeah, she has no time for bullshit.
Exactly. She just is going to throw herself out into this world and try to do something that makes it better because she has absolutely nothing to lose.
I think the moment in the script that is actually kind of a quick beat, but that has stayed with me the most, is when Lauren and Kate are making fun of this contemporary of theirs who's a senator's son who has decided to become a professional poet. And they are like, God, people give us a hard time, but at least we're not doing that. And I think that says so much to me about what this world is, that you can basically just deny beauty and art in favor of money and power. And I keep just in checking in with our national political scene, that has somehow stayed with me as this moment that encompasses so much. I don't really have a question associated with that, but if any of you would like to comment on that, you're welcome to.
Something happening politically?
Aya doesn't go online a lot, except for right now. I think what you're speaking to, though, is also a testament to Sarah's writing.
Yes.
In that if you make something that's true and you put it out there, the line that resonates with you and sticks with you could just bounce off the person next to you. But then there will be that other beat 2 scenes later that lodges in with them. And I think, there's something paradoxical, but I think kind of fun about the notion of watching some sort of creative art talk about this kind of conflict. Because what you have in each of these women on stage and here, and then who they represent when they're playing the show, is people that are trying to find their own creativity within that. And so it's also about the intersection and what happens when someone like Eisa's character comes and says, or you can do it like this, and then how that reflects back on you. And I think so much of the power of the play and the funny of the play is in watching these conflicts, these contrasts start to emerge.
Yeah. So Eisa, with your character representing integrity and authenticity, and then with you two representing the sort of, it comes across a little bit as the opposite of that.
How dare you?
I wanna ask you about your own affinity for lobbyists, because you guys can't go into onto the stage and into these roles thinking, all right, I'm going to be inauthentic and going for a power grab. You have to really, I imagine, understand the points of view and the motivations for these real life human beings. How do you make that happen?
Aya?
Do I make that up? I think it sort of goes to what I was saying earlier, which is that these are the creatives, and they're very smart. Just because I don't agree with them doesn't mean they're not incredibly intelligent and thoughtful. I think that's how you connect to a role is, I was born in San Francisco. I was raised by a poet and a now Buddhist priest. My experience is so the opposite of someone who would probably go into lobbying and be interested in this sort of thing in participating. So you just simply go, okay, well, if I had other experiences, how would I get there? So you sort of track back in a different way. But I do think that look, money and power is appealing sometimes, right? We all have moments where we want certain things, and we as sort of healthier, in my mind, human beings may judge that, but we can all connect to those moments of wanting that, even if we don't think it's the healthiest impulse.
I've also found it really refreshing and exciting to be playing a character and in a piece where the argument and the conflict is about ideas. And, we've commented that how rare it is that it's a majority female cast, and that it is not, there's no love story in the film. I mean, our characters are exes, but we're not currently dating. And so to be in a play where I'm going out there and advocating for a point of view or an idea, rather than so often what's the conflict for female characters, I've also just found really refreshing as an actress. So I think it's fun to be in that headspace as well. So I guess I get into that as the character.
And I think that, like your question sort of gets at what I think one of the highest joys and one of the greatest social goods that is in making theater and the things that we all do, which is that we get to step into people's lives that are so different than our own and make that compassionate trip, outside of our bodies and outside of our identities and our pasts into trying to understand why someone with these particular circumstances would behave in this way. And then once you have that kind of information, then you treat everything in the world differently, like whether that's you on stage, that's you as the playwright, that's you as the director, or you watching it, is that once you actually can start to understand how someone might get to this point that you're seeing, this point of behavior, and it's really kind of transcendent, and I think it's something that can really bind us and actually contribute to the kind of social discourse that we have.
Oh, so well said.
This is why you just ask Eisa.
Can we get that trending?
Just ask Eisa.
It's EISA.
Okay, so I
Thank
have
you.
another question specifically for Eisa.
Yes.
I see a political through line from Sydney. Oh no, I'm blanking on her last name. From Sydney Millsap.
Sydney Millsap.
Directly from Angela Davis.
Huh.
And you want to tell everyone who Angela Davis is?
Angela Davis is pretty dope. She's hopefully maybe some of you have heard of her. But she's an amazing feminist and scholar, and she, has a lot of history when it comes to trying to liberate all peoples from oppression. And I grew up with her. Yeah, she's someone that I'm privileged to call my aunt. So there's a way in which I think I get to sort of, really just, again, find a way that is discreet, and that's spelled D-I-S-C-R-E-T, from the way that I was raised into this character, because she has Sydney Millsap has very different politics than the ones that my aunt carries or that I was raised with. And yet, there's something about fighting for what is best, at least in your opinion, right? And I think that that's something that I definitely was raised in and inherited.
Yeah, to me it's justice, and
Exactly.
and I love just knowing that you have that relationship with her and seeing that power, and I imagine it like shining through you, and I said this earlier to you guys in the green room, like. There's this sense of pride in me, even though I had nothing to do with the creation of this play. But I feel proud as a member of the artistic community and as a theater goer and as a theater fan that work like this exists on the stage in New York and now is going to hopefully be available elsewhere. And I just admire all of you so much for committing your time and energy to making important theater that touches on the issues that affect everyone in America.
Well, you're nice to say so, and obviously it's a credit to the public theater for programming this kind of work.
Absolutely.
And what the public believes in, with a playwright like Sarah, who's trying to get a group of people who have never met to come and sit together and be there in the same room, having some sort of implied or actual discourse. So even if we're on stage talking for 95 straight minutes, the conversation is then up to the audience as they walk out into the night and wake up the next day. What are they thinking about? What's been jostled in them? And I think that's what's been so fulfilling about working with this group and on Sarah's play, is that those conversations start as soon as people get in the elevator. And that's all we're asking for, is people to keep talking. And I think that there's something very meaningful about doing that at the Public Theater.
What I want to know is, did Chili's sponsor this? Because the question I heard going into the elevator is there a Chili's nearby? A bunch of the scenes take place in Chili's.
I don't want to say there's some smell-o-vision going on, but let's put it this way.
It sure feels like it.
Yes.
I mean, that's why there's this margarita on the playbill, is that represents the scenes in Chili's.
And my delicate hand.
Is that your hand?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say
They couldn't afford my
That would
hand,
be
no.
amazing, and we'd have to get you to sign everything.
Yeah, could you guys clear this? Guys, can we just...
Yeah. So I don't know. I definitely wanted some sizzling fajitas right after I saw the show, and that feels like the perfect way to talk through the other issues in the show. Sit down over a giant margarita and talk about the state of American politics and the lobbying industry. We're going to take some questions from the audience if you guys are up for it. Let's do it.
Hey, question for Tommy. You mentioned earlier in the interview that your job as director is to find the right cast, then working with the cast as a whole, and then working with them individually. I wanted to know, as a director, how did that skill evolve? I know that you kind of started out with Freestyle Love Supreme. How did that kind of acting style evolve over time through working with those guys to display?
First of all, anyone who knows about Freestyle Love Supreme, we should be friends.
Does anybody in this room not
that's a
know
deep
about
cut, so I
Freestyle Love
appreciate it.
Supreme? Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
as America says nothing. Well, interestingly, Freestyle Love Supreme is this improvisational hip hop group that I made up with a couple of my friends. Lynn was in it, Chris Jackson.
That's Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Also has a last name. David, James Eigelhart, Chris Sullivan, a bunch of really talented folks. And the whole idea about that was taking what it was that they did specifically and putting it on stage. So they each had this very different skill. And that's just a manifestation of the same thing I'm trying to do when I work with any group of actors. And it's to identify what it is that they do and to try to create some sort of platform to access that. And so I think that, like anything else, practice makes me a little more evolved in my pursuit of that. And when I first started doing it, I think I probably had the misperception that I had to have all of the ideas. And then as you start working with really talented people, you realize it's just about hearing the ideas and identifying the ideas. And so that's really how I try to approach it. Best idea wins, and ego can't get caught up in that. And so when you have a group of really devoted and deep-thinking, compassionate cast members, you'd be a fool not to listen and to not engage in conversation. So a lot of it's just about listening.
I've heard you say before that it's not your job to have the best idea, it's your job to hear the best idea and allow that to be executed. And I think that's such a brilliant way of saying it. Also, while we're talking about Tommy's career,
Seriously, can we hijack this thing?
Listen, today is a really special day. It's the 10-year anniversary of Tommy's Broadway debut. It's the 10-year anniversary of the first Broadway preview of In the Heights. So it's just extra exciting to share this space with you.
Thank you. I was 68 when that first happened, so it's been a good 10 years.
Well, and it's it's also Valentine's Day, and now all of the sad single people have something really enthusiastic to celebrate on February 14th.
Hopefully everybody can celebrate it.
Of course everybody will, but it's my February 14th holiday now, is the In the Heights Broadway anniversary.
And Gillian and Eisa and I would like to recreate 96,000. I'm not gonna do it.
Quick, we got to go to commercial. Is there a commercial here?
Let's take another question.
Hello. My question is for Gillian and Aya. I'm a big fan of you guys from your work on TV. Community in particular molded my brain when I was in high school. I was wondering how collaborating with other actors differs in a stage setting than on a TV show.
I think the really fun thing about working with actors on stage is that you have a much longer period of time to explore any specific scene. So when you're working on TV, you have, basically a couple of hours to do a scene, and you do it over and over and over again, so you get a lot of variation. But the ability to think about it over a longer period of time and to watch as your scene partner's performance evolves and let that inspire you, you're able to think about each individual moment of it in a deeper way, and hopefully as time goes on, it becomes a richer performance. So I just really enjoy getting to be in scenes with these two women and watch them work and let that affect me.
Yeah, I mean, I think working with theater people, whether it's in film and TV or in theater, is often very enjoyable because there's a sort of common language of play. In film and TV, you can basically craft your performance alone and show up and do it, and it can come off great. I mean, I've seen actors, like, you could be rubbing feces on your face on the other side of the camera and there's nothing gonna change, and it looks great. But theater is interactive in a way that I've never done that, by the way.
What is happening right now?
God. Aya Cash, totally unprofessional on set. But in theater, you can't get away with that. So it's a collaborative sport in a way that film and TV can be, but not necessarily so. And so when you get to work with theater actors, it's often the same thing on camera. Is they're really excited to play and to see what happens, even if their face is not on camera at the same time.
Tommy, you directed Grease live for television. How is directing for television different from directing for the stage?
Well, that was sort of like this hybrid where it was taking a lot of the the aspects of trying to get ready for one performance, which is effectively what every show does. You're trying to get ready for your first preview, or the first time you meet the audience. So you sort of structure it in a similar way when you're making something live on television, or at least I did, because it's what I knew how to do. And then you, instead of having a tech process where you're introducing all the different elements on stage, that becomes a much more protracted thing that happens as you're coordinating cameras, and we happen to be shooting in a bunch of different places. But I will say that the job of the director is the same. It's to prepare everybody to go and do their job with the most confidence possible. So that you sort of put the things in your respective toolbox that carry on to the next thing, and then just surround yourself with people who can help you learn the other stuff. But my goal ultimately is to try to do a lot of live television, but like make new plays for it. Like, I'd love for Sarah to write something just for television. I think that there's a real opportunity going back to Playhouse 90 and these shows in like the 50s and 60s, where they would do live theater, and you get a group of actors and they would do it twice a night. They do it for the East Coast and then the West Coast, and they'd be an hour long, and they were written specifically for television. And I think there's an opportunity now because of how many homes television and on streaming services occupy.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought up the idea of brilliant playwrights writing for television, because we have one sitting on stage with us right now. Eisa Davis.
Don't look around, it's you.
Eisa is
it gets more annoying, guys. Listen to this.
Pulitzer finalist for drama. She is an incredible writer, and she's doing some of the best work on television right now with She's Gotta Have It, which I admire so. You said your ego never gets stroked. Here we go. Eisa Davis, you are one of the most multi-talented, across-the-board, brilliant human beings that I have come across in terms of the world of art. You have an incredible singing voice. You have a beautiful writing voice. We get to see you on stage, and you bring everything you've got to that role. So consider your ego stroked, and it all
And
comes
she looks like
deeply.
this.
I know.
She is icy, y'all.
Unfair.
So I would like for you to collaborate with Tommy on writing some plays live for stage.
Let's go. We can do it live on AOL, Yahoo. Come on, name a platform.
Amazing.
Well, can I say, thank you? And also, this is a day of love, right? It's like Valentine's Day.
Absolutely.
And I just have so much love for these women and this director and our playwright and Zach for, just being able to collaborate like this. I mean, it's actually something that doesn't happen to you every day, and it's you can show up in hopefully you're choosing projects that where you hope something like this will happen, but it really is like an amazing thing to be able to do this every day and just to share dressing room and to talk with these unbelievably smart, inspiring people. So love everywhere.
Yeah.
Send in the love.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. I realized that I said before, I made a passing comment about sad single people, and I did not mean to imply that people that are single are necessarily sad. What I meant in that context was anyone who wants to reject Valentine's Day has something else to celebrate. But it's in the Heights Day. But I also think it's such a good reminder that it's never a bad idea to just concentrate on the love that surrounds you in no matter what its form, whether it's Valentine's Day or not. Let's take another question.
Hi guys, thank you for sharing your story. I just had a quick question for Eisa. If you could go back, and you've accomplished so much and shared so much about what you've done, and your colleagues have mentioned that today, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self? I work with a lot of kids who are in foster care. We don't get a lot of great advice for them, and so I'm here to dispatch that message to them.
Wow. Well, I don't know. When it comes to advice to younger selves, and I don't know what I would actually say to myself anymore, but I think what I would say to the kids that you're working with is that self-worth can often be very hard to come by when you're of a particular class, when you're a particular race, particular sexuality, gender, and it's something just always to try to keep in mind, even when you're not feeling it, is that your self-worth is sovereign, that there's absolutely no removal. It's an inalienable right that you have, your self-worth. And so when the world around you might be trying to peck at that or scrape away at that, just remember that, you know, there's absolutely nothing that can take that away from you. And just to see if there's ways to find other people near you who do share some of those values that you have, and allow you to be creative, you know, in whatever it is that you do, so that you can share what that worth is in your own particular channel and way. And I think that, you know, so much of what it is that we want to do in life, whether it's like what we're doing in this play, you know, trying to shake up the system, or maybe trying to keep it going according to our benefit. I think if there's some way that we can all think about how our self-worth itself can be part of a greater good, you know? That when you're doing that thing of remembering that sovereignty that you have, that you're actually helping the world at large, you know? So that's what I would say. That's what I would say for today.
Can we just bottle her?
No, she'll be at the Public Theater.
Yeah, this King's opens on February 20th, and it's got a nice solid run, and so everyone go see it. We've got time for one more question from the audience.
Hi, guys. In the vein of the actual play, this is a question for you each individually. What is your opinion on the instatement of a 28th Amendment that would remove dark PAC and corporate money out of politics and out of campaigns? Just bring it back.
You know, obviously, that sounds like an absolutely wonderful idea. I think it's incredibly complicated and hard to pass, but I think that would be a wonderful idea. However, the thing that I've learned from this play is how little I understand about our government, and that there are so many ins and outs. There are probably some reasons as well why certain things exist, that taking all the money out of politics might actually cause the, you know, decline of something else that I don't understand enough, right? So I would like to say, yes, that's exactly the right answer, but there's probably a step down that would need to happen, because I'm sure that, like the Jenga, you pull something out from the bottom, it may all topple. Now, some people are saying that's what needs to happen in our government. I am not a destroy the government person. You know, I think that there has to be a way to work from the inside. But I think it's a great idea, but I understand that I understand too little to know if that's the right answer at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
Well said, Aya.
Hashtag Aya. Eisa, you got some?
Well, I don't know specifically the details about this amendment, but I do think that it's worth considering that, you know, the Constitution that we have, you know, obviously needs amending constantly, and that it was definitely created before the Industrial Revolution and before, you know, late capitalism, or, you know, I don't know what we're in right now. It's just like very you know, sort of amorphous. So I do think that there is something to be said about how a money system that was never foreseen by the framers could actually be in line with the democratic principles that we have. I think there's, you know, a lot of clash there.
Tommy, what would Alexander Hamilton say?
Well, it's funny because he called me, I don't know. I do, look, I think what's actually most evident as I've spent, you know, I grew up outside of DC in a little town called Alexandria, also hometown of Sarah Burgess, playwright. And being on the outside of Washington is a very particular perspective. So it's always there. It felt sort of far away, and yet you kind of visit it. And what I've learned through working on this play, and you know, just the conversations that come from trying to do something with authenticity, is you understand that really I think what's lacking is genuine conversation and listening. So whatever it's about, how do we try to create a situation where people can have dynamic and thoughtful and fully heard sort of not only conversations like just one-on-one, but how do we get groups of people to speak with clarity and to be able to talk through things in a way that doesn't have you know, a deadline or a countdown, and try to have thoughtful conversation. And it feels like there's much that this play I think is trying to stir up, and I think most of all it's about that kind of conversation.
So I have one last question for you, and that is, if each one of you, as your real life selves, not your characters, could lobby Washington for one thing, what would it be? Anything you want.
I have
you can
an
be
answer.
as creative as you want.
All right, mine would be for my home state of Pennsylvania. Can it be a state government thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. I've been thinking about it a lot this week. So I got to go to this program called the Pennsylvania Governor School for the Arts, which was a free program that was started, I think, in the 70s. It was 200 kids across the state of Pennsylvania. We all auditioned or applied in our art area, and it was 5 weeks on a college campus. It was totally free, and it was like a preview of like a college art school. And it has sadly been eliminated from the Pennsylvania state budget. So I set a little goal for myself this year to try in some way at least start the conversation of restarting Governor School for the Arts, because it was a hugely formative experience for me, and I think because it was free, it enabled kids from all different kinds of backgrounds to experience the arts, to get to study their art area and be exposed to things that they'd never seen, whether it's classical music, modern dance performance, poetry, whatever. So that would be my goal. So if Governor Tom Wolf is watching AOL Build, I would like to reinstate the Pennsylvania Governor School for the Arts.
Send him this clip immediately. Eisa?
So many things, but just for today, Clean Dream Act, immigration reform, period.
Yes. Aya?
Yeah, God, there are so many options. I mean, I think it's a toss-up for me between healthcare and bringing back individual mandate, and I think universal healthcare should be a right. But then, you know, our environment at this point, too, where even if we have healthcare, we're going to have, so, you know.
You guys got in really deep with this. I thought you were going to be like, you know, rainbow, you know,
You were like,
street
they're
signs,
actors.
or like,
They
you
don't
know,
care about
no,
the
I just thought, I thought it would be a little more whimsical, but I love that you guys take this so seriously. Tommy, do you have a wish, something that you would lobby the government for?
Probably arts and education programs. So I'll go there, I have confidence that these three will lead the rest.
Well, the great news is that the public theater is doing work that taps into most of these issues, serving the communities of New York, rich and poor, and bringing really thought-provoking, really brilliant, and incredibly entertaining work to New York in all 5 boroughs, including at the theater right around the corner from here on Lafayette Street, free Shakespeare in the park. There's a mobile unit that travels all over the place, and there are programs for students of all ages. So I could not be a bigger fan of the public theater, and King's is a perfect example of the great work that they are constantly putting on. Thank you so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah.